For the last couple of years, we've had a volunteer tomato plant take over this bed over here. This is a strawberry bed, but I just let the tomatoes grow because by the time they get really big, the strawberries aren't really doing anything. And surprisingly, it's one of the best producing tomato plants in our whole garden. Like all of the other ones that I purposely planted are not really doing anything, and we picked all of these cherry tomatoes from this volunteer plant. They're not the biggest since I don't prune this plant at all. Not bad for a volunteer plant. Today I'm going to be whipping up a batch of one of my favorite secret ingredients lately, and I call it a secret ingredient because it's one of those things where you can kind of use it in anything you cook and it makes it just so much better. And basically it's going to be a tomato, garlic, and shallot confit. Confit? Listen to me with my wonderful French pronunciation. Confit means to preserve, I think, in French, and it's a method where you cook something in fat at a very low temperature. So today I'm going to be cooking tomatoes, shallots, and garlic in olive oil at a low temperature in my oven, and it's going to make this delicious infused olive oil that you can use in lots of different meals and recipes. It is one of my favorite things that I've made recently, and it's so versatile. You can put it in so many things. I made this last week, and I've already used it all up because it's so good, and once you make it you're going to be putting it in everything. So I'm whipping up a new batch and I thought I would show you guys how I do it. So first off, I'm starting off with some cherry tomatoes from the garden. I have a mix of different kinds of tomatoes here, but mostly red cherry tomatoes because I think that like punchy, acidic, very forward tomato flavor is great for something like this. And last time I did this, I did mostly cherry tomatoes, and then I just added like maybe half a dozen cloves of garlic, and I did one shallot. But after you cook this all up, the garlic really softens up and sweetens. And I think the garlic was our favorite part of the whole thing. So this time I'm going to add a lot more garlic. And I want it to be more of like a garlic and shallot confit than a tomato confit. So I've got 2 heads of homegrown garlic here. And then I'm also going to add shallots as well to add more allium flavor. So I've got 2 homegrown shallots here as well. If you don't have shallots, you can use onions if you want, or just leave them out and then add more garlic. You can also just do this with tomatoes if you prefer, but I would highly recommend the garlic because I think it turns out so good. After it's all cooked, the garlic is going to get really soft and sweet, and it's going to have that mellow roasted garlic flavor rather than like a punchy, spicy, raw garlic flavor. So don't be afraid to use more garlic, especially if you love garlic. So I put my tomatoes in this glass container that is oven safe because I'm gonna cook the entire thing in this glass container. This is just gonna help me save up on cleanup because we're going to be using a lot of oil. We're gonna cover everything in oil, and to save myself from having to wash a pot and then having to transfer it to another container and get that container all oily, once it's done, I'm just going to put a lid on this glass container and it's gonna store exactly in the thing that we're cooking it in. So saves you from having to wash one thing from a lot of oil. And also I am going to be cooking this in my oven, or specifically my toaster oven. You could also do this on the stovetop at like a low temperature, but I'm gonna do it in the oven because it's more hands off. I can just set it at a low temperature and then just forget about it for like an hour or so. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. So I've got my tomatoes. Now I have to chop up the shallots, and then the garlic, I'm pretty much just going to peel it. I might smash it lightly just to help me get the peels off, but you don't have to chop it up or anything. You can leave them whole because once they're all cooked, they're going to be really soft, and it doesn't matter if there are big pieces in there. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing next. I've seen a lot of recipes on the internet where people do all garlic in their confit and some people do all cherry tomatoes, but I really like this combination of the garlic tomatoes and a little bit of the shallots as well. I think that they work really nicely together, and both of these things go really well in other meals and recipes that you would want to use it in. And I think that between like the garlic and the tomatoes, they do play very different roles within the confit because I feel like the garlic is actually infusing its flavor into the oil, and same thing with the shallots. But for the cherry tomatoes, it's kind of the other way around because they do stay mostly whole, and I don't think that the oil picks up too much flavor from the tomatoes, but rather the tomatoes get really beautifully gently cooked by the olive oil. So in a way, I feel like the oil benefits from the garlic and the shallots, but the tomatoes in turn benefit from the oil. So I do think that they play very different parts within this secret ingredient, and it's a combination that I really enjoy. Once I have my garlic peeled and my shallots chopped up, I also add salt and pepper to this mixture to make sure it's nicely seasoned, and I also like to add some crushed red pepper flakes. I'm using some crushed dried cayenne peppers from the garden, and this would also be a great time to add some herbs if you'd like to. I've done thyme and rosemary in the past, and those are really good additions. Today I'm not going to be doing that, but they are really good in this. And then for the final step, I'm just going to cover everything up in extra virgin olive oil. And I would recommend that you use a decent quality olive oil, not anything that's like processed. You want an extra virgin olive oil that tastes really good, because one of my favorite ways to use this oil afterwards is just spooning it over some bread. So you want some olive oil that's pretty good to begin with. And obviously it's going to become more flavorful as it infuses with these ingredients. But for something that's so simple, the quality of the ingredients is always more important. And the mixture looks so pretty even before we heat it all up. You just know looking at this that it is going to be so delicious once it's all done. Now this is just gonna go in my toaster oven or just a regular oven, and I like to do this at 300 degrees for at least an hour. You can definitely go down to 250 and then maybe do it for 2 hours if you want it to be lower and slower, but I really like this heat level and amount of time. It doesn't take too long, but I also kind of like roasting at a slightly higher temperature because I think this helps for the cherry tomatoes to like wrinkle up really nicely. And this is a perfect amount of time for everything to get really soft, especially the garlic. You can see after I've taken it out, I can really smash the garlic easily with the back of a spoon. It's a really nice, soft, creamy texture, and it's plenty of time for the olive oil to be infused. And I promise you, this is going to smell so good for the entire time that it's roasting in the oven. So make sure you're not hungry when you're doing this, because you're going to be smelling that oil and wanting to eat it immediately. So like I said, one of my favorite ways to enjoy this is to simply spoon the oil and any of the tomatoes, shallots, or garlic straight onto a slice of crusty bread. I like to kind of like smash that garlic clove over the bread, and it makes just the most delicious, creamy topping for some bread. And yeah, just make sure you get some of the oil as well as the vegetables in there, and it is just so good. I also have been using this oil a lot just to saute some simple vegetables in, and I swear my vegetables have never tasted better. So once the confit is all cooked and cooled off, you can just store it in the fridge for probably about 2 weeks. You can also freeze it for longer storage. I just keep it in the fridge because I know I'm going to use it all up really quickly. And like I said, it is a super versatile ingredient and kind of like a recipe starter. So there are so many things that you can use this in, but just for some ideas, some of the ways that I've really enjoyed using it lately are maybe scrambling some eggs in it. And this will make for some really luxurious, savory scrambled eggs. The olive oil gives it like a really silky texture. And when I've done this, they have been like the richest, most luxurious scrambled eggs I've ever had, and they also have that wonderful infused flavor. You can either do a spoonful of like just the oil, or you can include some of the vegetables as well to scramble with the eggs. So that's really great if you love like a savory breakfast. I think it's really good for like a weekend brunch. Another way I've really been enjoying it is just using it to toss some cooked pasta, and then it's basically just a pasta sauce all in itself. So I just boil up some spaghetti, and then when that's cooked to al dente, I'll just mix in some of this olive oil, and I'll make sure to get a lot of the shallots, garlic, and tomatoes in there. Maybe saute up a zucchini in the oil and add that in, and that is just like a full meal that is super quick and easy. I've been making this a lot for lunch because again, it's really fast and you basically have a sauce already made in this infused oil. And then a third way I would use it is if I'm cooking a batch of dry beans from scratch for the week, I can saute up a lot of my aromatics in some of this oil. So usually that's like onion, more garlic, and then maybe like a lemon sliced in half. I'll brown those up in a pot and I'll add in some dry beans, like some white cannellini beans. Add in a ton of that oil to help infuse the beans, and then that can cook on the stovetop for a nice batch of brothy beans. And this is a really great ingredient to have prepped for the week because you can use it in so many things, and then you can just have those beans ready for throughout the week. You can honestly just eat them in a bowl themselves because they're so good, or maybe serve some crusty bread with that. I also made like a stew with the beans that I cooked with the infused olive oil this week, and I did white beans, a tomato sauce, and then I poached some tilapia in it. So it's kind of like a bean, tomato, and fish stew, and it was so delicious. So those are just a few ideas for how I've been using this confit this past week. And then those 3 meals are like breakfast, lunch, and dinner already. So that's like a full day of meals that you can use up this olive oil. But yeah, if you have any other ideas, if you've done this before and you have recipes that you like to make with it, let me know in the comments down below and we can all swap some recipes. But I hope you try this out. It is so delicious and definitely a great secret ingredient to have prepped for the week. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.